Christianity, Bible and Alcohol. Episode 1. Welcome to this program, Time of Relief. In this new series I will be teaching on the subject of alcohol consumption. This topic is highly divisive among Christians, with Anglicanism, Roman Catholicism, Eastern and Greek Orthodox Church on one side, and Protestant, the evangelical groups, Pentecostals, Charismatics, Baptist, and Methodist and so on the other side. I was brought up as a Pentecostal Christian, follow the mainstream Pentecostal traditions as it is. But having done an extensive personal study on this subject, I now hold on to this position on the subject. One thing I have discovered is, most Christians do not know the church history and assume anything heard from the pulpit has always been biblical, even if such belief had been influenced by the culture through which Christianity first came to them. So in preparation of this study, I ventured into church history, used most widely acclaimed Bible concordance, Strong's Annotated Bible Concordance and Dictionary, to get to the root of words in its original tongue. I also study on this subject the culture and religion from which Christianity sourced, Jews' culture and Judaism. I study the writings of 1st century and medieval secular writers whose writings has no denominational undertones. Presently, there are three main camps as regard alcohol in Christianity. 1. Prohibitionist. Prohibitionists teaches that all drinking is a sin and that alcohol itself is evil. 2. Abstentionist. Abstentionists teaches that drinking is not sinful, but that all Christians should avoid drinking out of love for others and a desire to not cause anyone to stumble. 3. Moderationist teaches that drinking is not a sin and that Christian conscience must guide each person. Ironically, of these three doctrinal factions, the most recent to gain ascendancy, that deserved being viewed as modern invention, is prohibitionist. According to Wikipedia, this view is as recent as 1800 AD. Quote, Christian views on alcohol are varied. Throughout the first 1,800 years of church history, Christians generally consumed alcoholic beverages as a common part of everyday life and used the fruit of the vine in their central rite, the Eucharist or Lord's Supper. End of quote. That is, in about 2019 years since the advent of Christianity, and over 3,500 years of Judaism, this doctrine is basically new. It recently gained ground in United States and Britain to curb alcoholism problem that arose alongside Industrial Revolution of 18th century, about 300 years, after Protestantism itself started through Martin Luther. Martin Luther himself, the father of Protestantism, from which came Pentecostals, Charismatic, Evangelicals etc. consumed beer. He wrote to his wife, I sleep 6 or 7 hours running, and afterwards 2 or 3. I am sure it is owing to the beer. The Apostolic Fathers, the successors of the Apostles of Christ and early disciples, in 1st and 2nd century used alcohol. For example, Clement of Rome, who died in 100 AD, Clement of Alexandria, 215 AD, Tertullian, who also died in 220 AD. Abstention gained a little ground from about 300 years, after the time of Christ, and a negligent minority adhered to prohibition. It is noteworthy that the 3rd century marked the beginning of infra-Christianity, as delivered to us from Christ through his apostles, and the Apostolic Fathers that succeeded them. It was 3rd century AD that Christianity became the state religion, and the attendant Roman debauchery that influxed the church weakened it. Alcohol has always been part of Judaism and Christianity, according to Rabbi Eli Brackman and his wife, directors of Oxford Chabad Society. In Judaism, alcohol is not only allowed, it is recommended, it is an obligation, in which in the inauguration of the Shabbat, 1 glass is used, a cup for wedding, circumcision, and Passover 4 glass of wine. Alcohol is used for ceremonial purposes. Josephus and other 1st century secular writers, without religious undertones, affirmed regular consumption of alcohol both for social and religious use among the biblical Jews. All historical research outside the Bible in the works of Josephus, a Jewish secular historian, Pliny the Great and Pliny the Less, who were Romans, all confirms that wine made in 1st century Palestine, indeed was some of best in the world, and had a normal alcoholic content. Even if we Protestants will not accept the view of Anglicans and Catholics on this subject, What of Eastern and Greek Orthodox Church that has not really changed its practices from how it has been from antiquity? I read one prohibitionist preacher asserting on the net, that kosher wine as used by Jews of the Bible for Passover was non-alcoholic. Therefore, Jesus used non-alcoholic wine while inaugurating the Lord's Supper. This is contrary to Orthodox Jews, which still retain the culture of their forefathers, as it has been in Torah, Old Testament. I quote this online material, The Difference Between Halal and Kosher Food. November 28, 2013. Alcohol plays a very important role in Jewish culture. The only wines deemed kosher are those prepared and handled specifically by Jews. Other types of alcohol, such as white rum, white tequila, no tequila with a worm is kosher, unflavored vodkas, rye alcohol, unflavored gin, and all beers are kosher. Alcohols like sake, mead, brandy, liqueurs, and spiced rum may be consumed as long as they have certifications that no non-kosher ingredients were used in their production. End of quote. Prohibition is impossible to support, without deliberately ignoring the key word or phrase that expose the error of the belief, but it is rather fairly easy to prove that the scriptural stand is moderation. The best interpretation of the scriptures is often the simple one. Next episode we will examine the scriptures used in support of the assertion that drinking alcohol is sinful, and I will by God's grace show to you that it is impossible to prove it. Message by Reverend Silas Olufemi, telephone and WhatsApp number, 2348099863872, Lagos, Nigeria. Voice, TTS, powered by Time of Relief.